Hello, my friends. All right, so today we went from yesterday having fun and me not being very serious to a subject that can be potentially pretty serious. And I hope you're ready to have your mind blown, because I'm going to share with you revelation and an understanding that I've had recently about this subject. And I don't think I've shared the depth of the answer that I'm going to give. I've shared a lot of things, and I'll go over a lot of things I've already said in previous videos, especially the one I have done some about exorcisms and demon possessions and my experience with that. In case you're new to my channel, I'm assuming that this subject might get a lot of people who are new to my channel. My experience is that many years ago, I was in fact an exorcist. It wasn't like I became an exorcist. It wasn't like I chose to do it. It was just something that happened to me. I found myself in that role. And I learned a lot about what demon possession really was. At that time, I was a born-again Christian. And that went on for a good span of years. And during the latter part of that, I was in fact studying to be a minister. And so this would just happen routinely. I would be somewhere. I never went looking for it. Never. I never went looking to, oh, where can I cast demons out of people? I would just be somewhere and something would happen, or somebody would come up to me, or something along those lines. And I can tell you from personal experience that just about everything that you see in the movie The Exorcist actually happens. The only thing that really didn't happen was the spinning around of the head. But other stuff, crazy stuff happened. And we'll get into that. And that's not really what this is about. I don't want to, I don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? This isn't about just being titillated. I'm not trying to entertain you with some strange stuff. Just to let you know that stuff is real. The main truth that I want to give to you is that there is nothing to be afraid of. I don't care who you are. That there is actually a very simple way to protect yourself. And in order for somebody to become possessed, it actually takes a lot of work. You have to work really, really, really hard for that to happen. And I'll explain to you what that is so you can avoid it. And but as everything else that I teach, the whole point of everything I teach is to help you have the best life that you can have, to be happy. And that's really all that matters. There's nothing more spiritual than just being happy. The most spiritual person in the world is like, the old lady on the corner that says, hey, come on in, and serves you tea and gives you cookies and is nice to you. There's nothing more spiritual than that. There's no amount of enlightenment. You can sit on a mountaintop, or you can be in an ashram, or you can, preach from the pulpit. You can be, as super spiritual as you want. There is nothing more spiritual than just simply being happy and sharing that happiness with others and helping others to be happy. There's nothing more spiritual than that. Even though I teach a lot of deep spiritual stuff and I teach a lot of esoteric things, none of those things are designed to replace just simply being happy. So that's what really we're going to focus on. But, I will get into some of the things having to do with what demon possession is and what really happens during exorcisms, and what is the power that truly defeats evil. And it's not what you think. It's so simple. It's so simple. And again, this is not coming from a book. I didn't read this in a book. This isn't coming from some, spiritual text. This is coming from experience. I experienced this for years. And so I'm talking from personal experience, and so anyway, we'll get into that. So I guess the first thing that I want to do, again, I'm just feeling this need to focus on what the power is that destroys negativity. So I would like for you to just sit there for a second and ask yourself, what is that power? You know, if it's connected to some spiritual figure or teacher, you know, let that come to mind. In fact, I'm going to talk to you about why certain spiritual figures are associated with exorcism and casting out of demons. I'm going to explain to you some esoteric meanings. There are some things in the New Testament, even though this isn't where I come from nowadays, there are some things in the New Testament that are actually quite accurate when it comes to demon possession. And I want to share with you why these certain spiritual figures are associated with this. And I'll also tell you why when exorcisms don't work, why that happens. So we're going to get into all of that. So just give me a second to get my thoughts together here. I'm going to take a look at my notes, and while I do, you know, I'll take a couple of minutes here to, you know, take a look at my ads, and then we'll come back and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing that I want to stress to you is when it comes to demon possession or any kind of demonic attack, even if, you know, whether you call it oppression or possession or haunting or whatever it is, that can only happen if you allow it. You know, it's like, you know, when it comes to the movies about vampires. You have to invite a vampire into your house. He can't come into your house. That is symbolic of your body. Your body is the house there. And that is also the same symbolism that's used in the New Testament about the physical body. And so that's true. You cannot be influenced or attacked or possessed in any way unless you invite it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that this happens on a conscious level. And this is probably, I say this kind of stuff all the time, but I might actually be accurate this time. What I'm about to tell you may be the most important thing I could ever teach you, which is that when something happens on the unconscious level, meaning you are not conscious of it, that does not take away your responsibility. You are responsible for everything that happens to you, even if it's happening unconsciously. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that people who are attacked, who are haunted, who are possessed, these things happen on an unconscious level, meaning the contract between the individual and whatever negativity happens on an unconscious level, meaning if you were to talk to them, they would just tell you that out of the blue somewhere. You know, some of them will say, yes, I went to a satanic ritual or something, but some of them will just say, out of nowhere, these things started happening and I'm a victim, and they really honestly, on a conscious level, believe it. But what I'm telling you is that in order to have this happen, there has to be a deliberate, not an accidental, but a deliberate contract between the individual and whatever the negative force is. And by the way, this is true across the board. I don't make any distinction between spiritual happenings and physical happenings. It's the same whether you've got a destructive person in your life. If you're living with somebody who's abusive to you, the only reason those people are in your sphere of influence is because on an unconscious level, you made a contract with them. And we'll get into why that happens. But the bottom line is that you aren't a victim. There is something that you are getting out of this. And it won't make sense to you on a conscious level. If I tell you what it is on a conscious level, it won't make sense to you. So you have to understand we're dealing with the unconscious. And the unconscious is like the bizarro world. You know, normal rules do not apply there. This is, when we think about hell or we think about the underworld, we're talking about the unconscious mind, and things do not operate under certain, a black hole is a good example. Scientists, when you start talking about what happens in a black hole, they say, we really don't know because the laws of physics may not even apply because of, we don't know what happens there. And so this is what we're talking about. The unconscious mind is like the black hole. The normal laws do not apply. So you can't consciously try and think your way out of it. It takes a lot of fearlessness to be able to face the causes and the deliberate choices that have been made in order to put yourself in this position. So let me just lay the groundwork here that, again, I just want to stress, I am not interested in frightening anybody. I'm not interested in creating some kind of, just for the sake of entertainment, like horror movies. This is why I don't go to horror movies. Number one, unless they're really good, they bore the crap out of me. They're just stupid and silly. I remember once I was in a horror movie, and one of the guys next to me, wasn't with me, but towards the end of the movie, he said to his girlfriend or something, I didn't see one person get killed. Like that was the whole point for him. It's just that kind of stuff I find very stupid. The ones that are really good, I don't watch. Like The Exorcist. I won't watch that. And the reason why I won't watch that is because I know that there's enough factual, whether they did that on purpose or not, there's enough factual stuff in there that, I don't want to mess with that. So even though I was an exorcist, even though I am a spirit fighter, and, I have that knowledge, I don't play around with that. It's like, I don't go down into South Central LA and wear a Ku Klux Klan hat. I mean, I'm not stupid. So I don't mess around, and this is one of the things I see with these ghost hunters. They do really stupid things. They go into places that, they believe are haunted by seriously negative entities, and they don't know what they're messing with. They're picking fights with people they don't understand. So I never go looking for a fight. And that's important because you have to have that mindset. You go looking for a fight, then you start bringing that into your world. When I used to do exorcisms, even though I wasn't looking for it, I had to make the conscious decision that I wasn't going to do this anymore. And then that stopped attracting that scenario. So Anyway, that's the bottom line. I want to stress where I'm coming from and what's really most important here. And that you do need spiritual power to go up against. You know, I'll say this, the so-called exorcists that are, there's a famous team, I don't even remember their name, but there's a famous team of exorcists who I think are doing everybody a disservice, because it's obvious to me they're addicted to this chaos. It's the same kind of chaos that, you know, people have, you know, when they're addicted to being around, you know, like people who are in relationships with abusive people. And what they're doing is they're trying to avoid themselves. That's why I call it an addiction. And they're doing people a disservice. But here's something I want to say to you. This whole concept of fighting evil and standing against evil and exorcisms and, you know, all that kind of stuff, there's no need for it. If you are in alignment with yourself, there will never be a need for this. And a good example is in life. If you are an aligned person, if you are aligned with yourself and you are happy with yourself, you don't hear about these kind of people getting into relationships with abusers, predators. Predators look for victims. Predators do not go after people, beings, animals that are empowered. You know, out in the wild, what do the wolves do? Wolves are looking for the weak and the sick. And when they attack and kill a weak or a sick, they're actually strengthening the herd. They're strengthening the elk herd or the deer herd or whatever it is. It's not the same. Hunters don't do the same thing. You know, hunters go out and they shoot the big healthy elk. They don't go looking for the sick or the old. So wolves are actually, you know, helping. But they're predators. That's what predators do. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. This is how predators function. And the same thing in the human realm. You know, you've seen people like this. Predators go after the weak and those that can't defend themselves. And the same is true on the spiritual level. I'll give you an example. This really typifies what can happen and how somebody can attract negative entity. This is a friend of mine that I've known for a long time. And he explained to me that there was, I can't remember exactly what the circumstances was. I think he lost a girlfriend, or may have been a death, but I think it was a girlfriend broke up with him. And this really saddened him, like deeply, deeply, deeply saddened him. And he went into this huge depression. And he went and, you know, what he called into this really black space within himself. And he was just, you know, it was, I don't know if you've ever had that where you indulge in the depression and it starts taking you deeper, and then all of a sudden it sort of takes over and you can't stop it. You can't get out of it. He was going into one of those cycles. And then he said he felt something. And there was this big black shape in the room. And he could feel that it was coming toward him as a result of his sadness, and that snapped him out of it. And he said, "I'm okay, I'm fine," and he did. He got himself out of it, and that, you know, that what was happening in that moment. I'll explain to you exactly what was happening. Remember that what I'm saying about this is that whenever you've got any kind of abusive situation, demon possession, even on a human level, there is always a contract that is made. An energetic contract. Now, why this guy escaped this is because he became aware on a conscious level of what was about to transpire. Because what had happened was when he was indulging that deeply in his depression, which means that we're not talking about normal sadness. You know, I'm somebody, you know, I'm still working through normal sadness. I just lost my fiance to cancer 4 months ago. Very deeply sad. I wouldn't say I'm depressed because I'm pretty happy and functional, but I do have a lot of sadness. That's normal. That's healthy. That's not. You don't have to worry about, you know, pretending you're not sad. In fact, that's the worst thing you can do. But he was consciously indulging in the depression, the hopelessness, and that when you do that, you send out an energetic invitation. It's like blood in the water. It's like cutting yourself. You go out where all the great whites are and you cut yourself and then jump in the water. They're going to smell the blood and they're going to come looking for you because they're looking again for somebody that's injured, right? So when you do that, and this is why, again, I do not recommend using things like, power plants and hallucinogens, because under the wrong circumstances, it cracks you open. And if you don't know what the hell you're doing, and if you're not aligned, blood goes out in the water and the sharks are going to come. So this is what happened. And the way he described it is that he was really, really indulging, not just for a few moments or for an hour. He was like really doing it for an extended period of time. I don't know how long it was, but it was long enough that he sent out a very clear message that he was indulging in his despair. And then that dark being appeared. And the way he described it, he didn't use these words, but the way he described it was that it sounded as though like somebody said, "You rang, here I am." And what will happen at that point was that the entity was then giving him an energetic invitation to say, "I can come into your world if you want me to distract you from this pain." Now, those aren't the words that are used, but that is the contract. What the universe is doing 24 hours a day, 60 seconds a minute, 60 minutes an hour, every moment, the universe is bombarding you with energy so that you will evolve. That is why we live in cities, because cities create this psychic shield. That's why people don't like living in the middle of nature most of the time. They're afraid of it. They want to build a city because we use the power of our emotions and our mindset to create a shield. I know this because I've spent, lots of time in powerful places in the wilderness, and I can tell you that if you spend enough time out in the wilderness by yourself without any cell phones or telephones or anything like that, your whole mind, everything starts to change and things start to open up, especially if you have that ability. I kind of got lost here, but so he was at that point where he felt the invitation. And again, these aren't his words, these are my words. The invitation for him that entity would have come and possessed him or been a part of his world if that entity saw that he was unwilling to let go of his own limited depression. Not normal feelings, but indulging in the depression. Indulging in being a victim. Because as I'm thinking about it, in that situation, what he had the opportunity to learn from was, if the scenario is accurate that I'm describing, that he was rejected by some woman that he really was in love with. Instead of indulging in the despair of I'll never be loved again and I'm worthless and all the other stuff that goes along with that, he could have gone, okay, this is really painful, but let me examine my perceived need to be with somebody. Or he would confront his feelings of insecurity, or, and I remember this guy. This guy was alone for a long time. He might even still be alone. He's one of those guys that never got a relationship. And it was unnecessary because he was a really wonderful guy. So it's clear from the outside, those of us watching him, that this is his choice. Now, he may not have that experience. His experience may be that nobody will ever love him. But in order to let go of that mentality of nobody will ever love him, he would have to face the pain of that and work through it, and then make the fearless choice of deciding that he was valuable and he was lovable, and then he would learn to love himself on a deeper level. So he wasn't doing that. He was doing the opposite of that, which means that the universe is saying, listen, this lesson of being rejected is about you learning to love yourself. And it's painful, and it's not what you want, and all of those other things, but it's about expanding your understanding of yourself, dying to the limitations that you currently have, which are a false understanding of who you are, and being able to rise up to be who you truly can be. He wasn't doing that. And so this entity was coming to him saying, I will help you stay there if you want. But he would have had to do something to create a bond with that entity, and then he might have become unconscious about it, because this is what happens a lot. Once that happens, then the person becomes unconscious about what happened. It gets pushed down, and all they know is all of a sudden, I'm being attacked by this evil entity, and I'm victim of whatever it is. So this is what has to happen. And it's true, you know, again, look at if you're in an abusive relationship, this is why. If you're one of those people that you keep attracting the same kind of, listen, I'm in one of those spots. I'm looking at myself too. I'm in one of those spots. I had my fiance who was the ultimate, the perfect. But leading up to that, there was a certain type of woman that I kept attracting. And since my fiance has died, a couple more have popped up, and I keep attracting them. And it's the same, it's that same old scenario from before. And I'm having to ask myself, why is this? Why do I keep doing that? But it's me. I'm obviously sending out that message. Otherwise, I wouldn't be attracting those kinds of women. So the same is true. There's no difference between the physical and the spiritual. Everything operates on the same laws. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into I'm going to share with you, actually I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how deep I'm going to go into explaining it, because it might take up a lot of time. But in any case, before I get any deeper into it, I want to check and see who's on the Q&A. So let me put on my glasses so that I can see what's going on here. All right, so again, the best way to interact with me is to leave a question. If you want me to answer your question, put question. Again, this is only for the Q&A, the live Q&A. It's not after this has been archived. If this has already been archived, then just put a comment in the video section. This is only for the live Q&A. I need to see the word question so that I know you want to ask me a question. Carol McKenzie says, question. Is it possible with the current drugs, myth, etc., that demons, if what you mean by the current drugs myth, do you mean like the shamanic myth, that there's this mythology that taking hallucinogens is spirituality? If that's what you mean by that, yeah. It cracks your aura open. And again, I stress this. People in those indigenous cultures that do this, they are raised totally differently than moderners, especially modern Westerners. They are raised in a loving communication with people who support them, and that's what empowers you. By the way, the most powerful thing you can give to a child is honest love, reflecting back to them who they truly are, not overprotecting them and not abusing them, or that's why Westerners are so empty inside. So, yeah, when you've got somebody who isn't empowered and hasn't been raised in a truly empowered culture that understands the purpose of those, you bring in some Westerner and you give them ayahuasca or whatever, it's going to crack open their aura, and there's a good chance that, it's not going to help them. And it could very well do the opposite. It could crack their aura open. And again, you're just going to like spread blood in the water. If they're broken inside, it's just going to attract the sharks. So yeah, I don't think it's helpful. I don't recommend that anybody do it. I don't teach anybody to do that. Okay. So looking for the questions again. I'm glad all you guys have So somebody says, what about black magic? So divine capacity, again, if you ask a question, please put question. I almost missed you because you look like everybody else's comments there. So divine capacity says, what about black magic? Now, instead of just leaving that, he's going to give me a big story, and so I have to figure out what the question is. Are you really asking a question, or are you wanting to make a statement? What about black magic? I was sectioned, someone touched my ear with something, then washed his hands, then 2 months after, something crawled in my ear, then since then I have been going through a lot. Well, I mean, there's a lot of assumptions there. You were sectioned, meaning that you're from the UK, and you were sectioned, meaning that somebody said that you had mental and or emotional issues. Could it simply be that you have mental and emotional issues? That is a real thing. Someone touched your ear with something and then washed his... I don't know who that someone was. And then 2 months after... So it's not like somebody touched you and then something crawled into your ear. You're saying somebody touched you and then 2 months later something crawled into your ear. So again, this looks like you have an emotional issue. You may need counseling. I don't see anything in there that says anything about black magic. You've got, you're looking for a reason to justify your experience instead of, I don't know what is going on, but nothing in that says black magic to me. I could be wrong. I don't have enough info, but that's the other thing too. There are people who are schizophrenic. And again, the whole point of this, I'm trying to say, the whole point of all of this, whether it's black magic, whether it's demon possession, none of it can happen unless you open the door. And the biggest way to open the door is to have unresolved emotional issues. People who have depression, people who have, unresolved resentment. All these things can open the door. This is why basically what I spend a lot of time teaching people to do is how to be emotionally healthy. Because that's the most power that you can have. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. All right, again, I'm really not interested in your comments. I know everybody has a great story to tell, but I really want to get to the questions. Sean 303 question, is energetically grounding red root chakra into Mother Earth a way of draining emotions away? Why would you want to drain your emotions away? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I understand it. It sounds like you want to escape your feelings, and that is not a healthy thing. Grounding yourself in Mother Earth is absolutely healthy. So energetically grounding yourself is always a good thing. But Mother Earth, when you ground with her, she's going to want you to experience your emotions. She's not going to drain your emotions away. I guess as I'm thinking about it, when I go surfing, I do feel a cleansing. But the other thing that happens is I experience my emotions and I let them out. So I don't know why you want to drain your emotions away. There's no reason to do that. Yeah, and then you say, tremendous damage has occurred for me trying to numb out my emotions. I agree with you. It is very damaging. It's the fastest way to get sick and give yourself potentially a fatal disease. So, okay. Looking for the questions. Question. How can we empathize with weakness, fear, victimhood in ourselves and others? Well, just by that. I mean, how can you empathize? Just by empathizing. Listen, I am not saying, it's not my intention anyway, to judge or criticize somebody who has difficulties or pain or, so-called, problems, whatever. I'm not trying to say that at all. Just be kind to them. You can tell the difference between somebody who is honestly in their feelings and somebody who is in self-pity. Nobody likes to be around somebody who's in self-pity. Self-pity is not taking responsibility. Somebody who's mourning and crying and having their feelings and trying to work through that, you feel a desire to, well, most of us, feel a desire to help them. So how can you empathize? Empathize. But, I mean, you kind of have to ask yourself, is this person feeling sorry for themselves? Or are they honestly, working through grief? So it's a very general question. I can't, give you more specific answers than that. Question, can spirit fighting damage electronics? You mean this spirit fighting in general, or the spirit fighting that I do? No, it's not going to damage electronics. But I don't teach spirit fighting. So, if you're asking me that, doesn't matter. I'm not teaching anybody spirit fighting. So we don't have to worry about that. Ramna in Germany says, since I had my awakening, I don't know what your awakening is. That's your self-diagnosed awakening. I don't know that it's an awakening. You might have had an emotional crisis that's driven you deeper into your own narcissism. I don't know that you're awakened. Maybe you are. But if you're full of stress and suicidal, assuming that you're right, it means that you have unresolved emotions. You need help. I think I've told you this before. You need to go get help. You can't fix yourself. Your awakening means nothing if you're unhappy and miserable. I see videos on YouTube, and one guy, a guy who I would consider to be a cult leader, I don't consider him to be a teacher, but the title of his video was, Why Enlightened People Are Depressed. Why Spiritual People Are Depressed. What a load of bullshit. If you're depressed, it means that there's stuff in you that needs to be resolved. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not judging you. We go through this life, and life is full of ups and downs, and awakening will have all kinds of stuff like that. But to just look at that to say, oh yes, that's why spiritual people are depressed, and if you're depressed, you're a very spiritual person. What a bunch of horse crap. Since we're destroying sacred cows here, Mother Teresa was deeply depressed. And people look at her as this spiritual saint. This is somebody who didn't, by her own admission, she didn't trust God. She didn't understand, how can there be a God when there's so much suffering in the world? This is a deeply disturbed person. This is not a saint. So I don't teach people to be martyrs. Martyrs are not saints. They are full of self-pity, and they are usually trying to manipulate other people. They're usually either outright passive-aggressive. There's nothing spiritual about any of that. In my opinion, true spirituality means that you are achieving a measure of happiness and joy, and that you do go through normal human emotions of sadness, fear, grief, anger, resentment, and you take responsibility for them and you work through them. I'm one of these guys that, I've been, when I, date women sometimes that, are on different levels in their life doing different things, they get confused because normal fights start to happen. And what I say to them is, listen, you can tell me anything that you feel about me as long as you own it. In fact, you can look me in the face and tell me, I'm feeling really angry at you right now. I'm feeling murderous towards you right now. If you can do that and own it, I will hug you. I will thank you for that. And some women have been like, what is with you? Normally I do this and my boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. It's because thank you for letting me connect with you. Because if I see that, then I can take a look and see if I am being harmful to you or not. But even so, just you having your honest feelings, that's a real turn on for me. I really love that. So I don't know if you're having an awakening or not, my friend, but I do think that you can definitely, you need help. If you don't want to work with me, you got to work with somebody. But your awakening is meaningless if all you have is stress and suicidal thoughts. It's not an awakening. There's nothing spiritual about it, unless you are working through it. But it sounds to me like you're stuck because we keep having this discussion, and that's okay with me. But I'm just being straight with you. My job is to help you, so I'm being straight with you. Divine capacity again. I think I already answered that question, but all right. So, question. Let me see. Whoop, let's back up here. Question, Eric Schmunzeler. Have you ever noticed that it's always little girls who get possessed in movies? Is there any truth to this? Well, do little girls get possessed? Yes, there's truth to it, but that's just because when you're making a movie, you know, there are certain things that symbolically make the viewer more interested, and so you have this juxtaposition or whatever, I don't know what word I'm using. You have this scenario where you have the most innocent, supposedly weak, vulnerable, innocent victim becomes obsessed, and we relate to that. Whether you're male or female, in these kinds of situations, we relate to the most vulnerable, because that's how we feel when we're being attacked and oppressed. So that's all. That's just a symbolic tool to pull you into the movie and make you, want to watch it. Question, Archon Buster. Archon Buster. Question, is sleep paralysis related to negative entities, or is it related to astral travel? It's related to both of those things, and it's also related to when you are in sleep mode and you're dreaming, your body will go into paralysis, because if it didn't, you would. This is why people who sleepwalk, that isn't functioning. So they get up and they walk around and they dream and all that. More often than not, it's that you're waking up as you're dreaming and your body is in paralysis mode. That's usually what it is. But I've had that experience with negative entities in dreams, but it's also because when you dream about negative entities, you try and wake yourself up. So it doesn't mean that you're actually experiencing negative entities. You may be, but it's more likely that you are trying to wake yourself up out of a bad dream and you're in that paralysis, sleep paralysis. Astral travel, the same thing. You're trying to leave your body and you go through that period where you feel your body is, you're trying to separate from your body and you're asleep and your body is in paralysis mode. That's all. Mocha Loca, question, what do you recommend me to do to get rid of a fear loop I've created to myself? Well, Mocha Loca, I don't have nearly enough information to help you. You have to have a session with me. Go to career.thunderwizard.com and get a session with me, and then I can ask enough questions to find out what you need. Bottom line is, if you're in a fear loop, you have to start acting and taking action towards what you really love, what really makes you happy. If you're deep enough in a fear loop, you may not know what that is. You may be in conflict with yourself and you need help. So I can't answer that. I wish I could just say, do this, press this button, do this mudra. I can't. I need to know what's really going on with you. But thank you for the question. Romney on Germany, question. I can't let go of my depression and stress. I'm suicidal. At the same time, I'm filled with anger and even try to mock demons so they come for me and I can fight them. What exactly is going on? What exactly is going on, my friend, is that you are looking for reasons to divert yourself from what your real pain is about. And you are being self-destructive because you are a normal human, and things like deep depression, deep sadness, deep pain, deep anger. Anger is just a mask for sadness, by the way. So you are having difficulty being able to consciously and fearlessly work through your feelings. Like I said before, you need help. This is the same guy. You need help. So this, you're just telling me you're really not having an awakening. Something may have happened which may have stirred you, but I wouldn't call it an awakening unless it moves you towards taking responsibility for your feelings and finding joy. You're having difficulty, and I commend you for being honest about that. A lot of people lie and pretend everything is okay and I'm wonderful. I just was talking with somebody the other day who was that way. This person was so full of unresolved rage and fear and sadness. And when I just mentioned a little bit about, maybe you would benefit from taking a look at some of your feelings, she had to get off the phone. She said, I can't talk to you. I don't feel empowered and I don't want to talk to you anymore. So there's a lot of resistance to that. It's very painful. And she was one of those people that says, and I just need positive people. I just need to look at positivity. I can't have any negativity. I just need positivity. This is somebody that's in denial or trying to stay in denial, but it's not working. And this is what happens when you have things like chronic pain and fibromyalgia and, where you're allergic to absolutely everything and you're super sensitive physically, emotionally. It means that, you are denying a lot of things to the point where it's coming into your body and your body is self-destructing. And you have those diseases that doctors don't know what caused them, but we know that they're stress related, and here's a pill and here's a pain pill or, something like that. Like that commercial for fibromyalgia, a commercial for some medication for fibromyalgia where they say, fibromyalgia is a nervous disorder which is caused by a nervous disorder. I mean, they don't even know. They don't even know what causes it, But, I mean, as a shaman, I think I have a pretty good idea about that. Anyway. All right, moving on. Let's see if I can find any more questions here, and then I'll get to some more teaching. What is my percentage... Pharaoh Horus, what is my percentage on my ascension? How should I know? Who cares? Just be where you are. Who cares, man? Ascension is great. I teach ascension. But in order to ascend, you have to be in the moment. If you're asking what your percentage is on your ascension, you're not in the moment. You're using spirituality to escape. And I don't teach that. Let's see. What else here? Question. Swift data. Do negative entities evolve like us, or are they stuck in that form? It's a great question. I believe that negative entities are like human souls. In fact, they might even be human souls. But whatever they are, they are. The reason why when somebody is in the state that I described earlier, where they're in denial, and they're seeking to stay in their victim mentality, in order to avoid the real pain of working through the issue. They attract entities. So that's my belief, that negative entities are in that same place. That's why demons are so angry. Have you ever noticed that? The one thing that you can say is true about demons is that they're angry. And who are people that are angry? People who are angry are people who aren't getting what they want. They see themselves as a victim. That's why they always seek power. And again, anger hides sadness, deep sadness. So demons are actually operating from a fear-based mentality. They're afraid, because that's the other thing you see about demons. When they're confronted with the light, whatever that means, they become terrified. What they're terrified of is their own divinity, same as you. So that's why people attract that, and you never have somebody who has their life really together and healthy and wonderful who gets possessed. It never happens. Maybe it happens in the movies, but in real life it never happens. I can tell you from experience. I have never done an exorcism on somebody who had their shit together and then all of a sudden they became possessed. There's years and years and years and years and years of either trauma and or victim mentality and depression and drugs sometimes and other things. It takes a really long time to get possessed. It takes a lot of effort. You got to work really hard at it. Let's see here. All right. Blaxican, you didn't put question, but I did catch it. You're obviously new to my channel. Can you be possessed by a positive entity? I don't know why you're asking me that. Do you want to be possessed by a positive entity? That, to me, sounds like, again, a way of escaping. You want something outside of you to make you feel good. No. You can be possessed by your own soul, by your own happiness. So you can be possessed by a positive entity, which means being in touch with the divine joy within your own soul. But possession, means control, something that is forcibly controlling you. Again, you know, I don't know what you're talking about, but based on that, that's my response. Yeah, you can. It's your own soul. You can't find anything more wonderful or positive than your own soul. Nothing. Nothing outside of you. Let's see. It looks like somebody's... Anyway. I'll have to look at that a little bit later. All right. So, looking for the questions. Where did you get the tapestry that sits behind you, and how do I get one? I got it off of eBay, and I just simply typed in Celtic tapestry, I think. Yeah, if you want to take a look at it, it's pretty cool. Woohoo! There's another one over here, which is of a tree. It's kind of cool, too. You should see the one that's right there. That one's really cool. But I'm not going to turn my computer all the way around just to show you that. So just go on to YouTube and type in Celtic tapestry, and this should come up. No, I'm the only one that sells them, and they cost $10,000 a piece, and I bless them in holy water. So send me $10,000. And no, I'm kidding, obviously. Daniel Borgerson question, with regards to fibromyalgia, how do I work with it? What do you mean? Do you have it, or do you want to heal somebody of it? Just like you said, I tried to work through it and ended up passing out. Get my book, which is called The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. There may be other things that you can do. There may be other kind of holistic things that you can do. There's probably therapy is helpful. You know, talking to somebody about your pain. You can work with me if you want. Go to career.thunderwizard.com. I can probably find out at least some of the causes, if not the root cause of why you have manifested this in yourself. But get that book. If anything else, get the book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to the Perfect Life. You can go to michaelwilliamdenny.com, D-E-N-N-E-Y, and just look for that book and get it. And then you're probably going to have to work with somebody. Okay. Christopher Lopez, does masturbation really attract negative entities? I never said that. So when you say really, that's usually what you say to somebody. I never said that. No. No. Let's just leave it at that. No. Unless it is part of another scenario that you're using to divert yourself from your feelings. I mean, if you're an addict, then it might be, but no, I wouldn't worry about it other than that. Again, you've got other issues. Even if masturbation is part of that. It's part of your ritual for diverting yourself. It's only one of the details. It's not the cause. Okay? Cosmo joke. Yeah, okay. Let me see. All right. So, let me take a short break here. And I will come back and I will have more things to talk about. So I'll be back in a couple minutes here. Okay, welcome back. All right, so before we go any further or any deeper, I think what I want to do now is I want to, I was thinking I was going to tell you some stories of things that I saw and did and all that, and I'm not really feeling motivated to do that. I've done it before. If you want to, you can go on to look for the video, another one about the truth about possession or demons or something like that on my channel. And you can hear about, I think I tell the story about at least one or two of them. I don't want to do that because, again, I'm not looking for sensationalism. That's the word I've been looking for. I'm not. This isn't a video about sensationalism. It's a video about making your life better. So the question, if you noticed here in this little screen, what is the power that defeats evil? So the power that defeats evil, as you see on there, you can see a lightning bolt coming down. And there's no coincidence that Thor, the god of lightning and thunder, is the god who fights the Thyrses. So the closest thing to a demon in the ancient European tradition was a Thyrse. And so it is Thor that is off fighting in the east. So there's also no coincidence that the spirit fighting practice that I learned, which is a shamanic practice where you do some powerful exercises and techniques which give you the ability to walk into a room and destroy negativity. Somebody asked, do you fight negative spirits with your bare hand? You don't. Please don't try it. Do not try this at home. But yes, a trained spirit fighter in that Taoist tradition, yes, will fight them with his or her bare hands. But you have to have the right energy to do it. And not everybody can do it, and a lot of people did it, and they got hurt doing it. So the reason why that is a brand of thunder magic, and thunder magicians were known to be able to trap demons, and they trap them in gourds and do all kinds of other things with them. So why is this connection to it? Now, there's a connection to this and the New Testament. You're like, what? Well, Jesus has a strong association with fighting evil and with casting out demons. And that is because Thor, thunder, and Jesus all have an association with the planet Jupiter. And Jupiter is the planet that, a lot of them will fight demons. In fact, in the Vedic tradition, there are fierce forms of all the different deities, and they may be associated with different planets. But there's a reason why there is this connection here, because planet Jupiter has to do with healthy spiritual boundaries. Healthy spiritual boundaries. And I'm going to share with you a way that will potentially make you bulletproof. Before I get into that, I'm got a friend of mine who's deep into Tibetan Buddhism, and he's connected with the muckety-mucks high up in Tibetan Buddhism, and we've been talking about this, which is why I've been thinking about it. And what he's told to do if he ever comes into that situation is to not have anger and to have compassion. And that's what makes the Buddhist monks bulletproof. So what's interesting to know about that is that when you do not have strong spiritual boundaries, you open yourself up to be influenced by others. Now, inherent in that, it is impossible for you to open up your boundaries unless you want something from somebody else. And in fact, one of the remedies, if you live with somebody who drains you of your energy, they always want something from you all the time, they're taking advantage of you, they're passive aggressive, they're manipulative, and what do I do with these people? How do I defend myself? And my answer is just give them whatever the hell they want. Don't ever give something to somebody with an expectation of getting something back. This is Jupiter. Jupiter is seen as the most beneficent of the planet, the most generous of the planets. Jupiter is the priest, and Jesus is all about sacrifice. Thor is, it says in the mythology that nobody can get married without Thor's permission. Why is that? Because marriage, true marriage, is a fusing of healthy boundaries. If you don't do it, in a healthy way, and what is the vow when it comes to marriage? I completely, totally give myself to you, and I am there for you in sickness and in health. In other words, I don't have any agenda with you. I just love you unconditionally. That's very hard to do. But when you have both people who have decided to do that, and if both people are in that state of giving unconditionally, then nobody gets taken advantage of, because you want what's best for the other person. The last thing you want to do is take advantage of them. Here, let me love you. I just went through this. Obviously, my fiance died of cancer, and, the last year of her life, she was incapable of really giving me anything. I mean, that isn't to say she didn't give me a lot of things. Of course she did. But, really, there was nothing left for me to do. I mean, I couldn't expect anything from her. I couldn't ask anything from her. It would be ridiculous of me to expect her to give, a lot of her time and energy, because she just didn't have it. The only thing I could do was just love her unconditionally, which is what I did. I just loved her, and I gave her whatever she needed. Whenever, one of the things that I did that she said that other people didn't do is that when I was with her, I never, got upset, oh, you got to get better, or what a lot of people did, especially in the beginning, which is, shake their finger at her, telling her, you need to do this, and you need to go to this doctor, and you need to have this operation, and why aren't you? You have to heal yourself because we need you, right? So there's people with a lot of expectations. I understand that, so I'm not judging them, but I made the decision from the moment that I met her and knew that she was struggling with this disease, that my job was just to love her unconditionally. And I loved every second of that. I wouldn't take a second of that away, even the really painful stuff. And I was with the only person that she could be around, especially in the later stages of her disease, where she could say, you feel so calm. I wasn't. But I was really just in that moment 100% there for her. And I knew she didn't want somebody sad or upset or flipping out. And I would just be there with her. And I would just radiate that I accepted her exactly as she was. She didn't have to get better for me. She didn't have to die. She didn't have to do anything. She could just be wherever she was. I was bulletproof. There was nothing she could do or say that would have, damaged me, even if it hurt me. And there were some things that were hurtful. But because I was 100% there for her, I was bulletproof. This is the connection. This is why Thor fights negativity. So what does this have to do? This means whenever I deal with people who are in abusive relationships, here's the part that they don't want to hear. You're in an abusive relationship because you want something from that person. You want them to love you. You want them to give something to you. You went into it with an agenda. And when you have an agenda, your protection is gone. And that's what predators are looking for. And they manipulate you. They tell you, I love you, or I'll take care of you. And it's only when you're in a place of emptiness or weakness or insecurity, that you want or need something from somebody else, that is the only time that a predator can come in and take advantage of you. What about, people who lose all their money, like the people who lost all their money in, whatever that Ponzi scheme was? Unless you have agreed about, and you give more than you can afford, right? Because one of the guys, who was the guy? I forget his name. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Madoff. One of his self-justifications was that he would tell people, never give me more than you can afford. If you can't afford to lose it, don't give it to me. That was his justification. But people out of their greed, and he would say that, people out of their greed gave me their whole life savings after I warned them. Well, he's right. Never give anything to somebody that you can't walk away from. If they're not going to give you back what you want, or, I gave everything to my fiancée, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I love her that much. And I don't regret any of it. It's sad. It hurts. But it's made me so much of a better person. So this is why Jupiter is always connected with getting rid of demons. Demons and demon possession are an extreme sign of somebody who is operating from a victim mentality, who believes that the universe is not going to give them what they want. They don't believe the universe loves them. They believe that they need to get something from other people. And I know this from experience, having worked with people who were demon-possessed. They were incredibly victim-minded, and they were constantly asking me to give them things. You don't understand, I'm weak, and can you please help me with this? Even down to, the guys on the street. You've got homeless people on the street who, again, I'm talking from experience. I've got a family member who, I don't know if he's homeless now, but according to what I heard, he was homeless. And he expects everybody to do things for him, and he won't do a damn thing for himself. So, see where I'm coming from with this? So when people are so lonely, and they're so depressed, and they're so this, again, I'm not trying to ridicule you, but in all that pain, you can still make the decision to decide to be self-empowered. You can make the decision that you can have everything you need. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with letting people love you. The woman I shared you about, I was talking with on the phone, I normally charge people a lot of money for the advice I was about to give her. Because I said, listen, you came into my life for a reason, and, I don't know what it is, but, you haven't asked for my help, but I do have, I think, some suggestions from a shamanic perspective that might help you. And in which case, then she asked, kind of reluctantly, because she thought she was going to get something else from me. And I started to tell her, and, 2 or 3 sentences into it, she just hung up on me. She didn't want to talk to me anymore. She didn't want to hear that. She didn't want to hear that she had to take responsibility. She didn't want to hear that she had to face her own pain. So no matter how horrible things are, no matter how far down the scale, even if you are, in fact, demon-possessed and you're listening to me and you're a victim, you can make the decision right then and there to say, you know what? Everything I need is within me. Everything that you need is within you. Now, it may take a while for that to manifest, in terms of physical things. And it may take a while for that to manifest in terms of people who will actually love you unconditionally. But here's the thing. People aren't going to love you unconditionally if you've got an agenda. People who, I talked about martyrs. If you're a martyr, here's a phrase that martyrs say. I don't ask for much, but I need, whenever you hear I don't ask for much, they ask for a lot. They don't come out with it, they do it passive-aggressively. Passive-aggressive is kissing somebody's ass, is people pleasing. People pleasers are the flip side of predators. That's why predators and people pleasers go together. If you're a people pleaser, it's not because you're spiritual or because you're generous. It's because you're really selfish. How can you say that? I give my time. I give everything to my partner and he gives nothing back to me. You still want something from it. And the pregnant pauses to let it sink in. And I have a radar when it comes to people pleasers, man. I go the other way. The last thing I want is to be around a people pleaser, because I know whatever it is that they're giving you for free, all of the love that at some point it's going to come out of your ass. At some point, and some of you may know what I'm talking about. You get in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or other kind of relationship with a people pleaser, and they give and they give and they give, and you're like, wow. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, a year later, there's this blow up where they blow up at you. You don't spend enough time with them. You don't love them enough. They give you everything, and they're not getting anything. I went through this. It was a long time ago, long time ago. And I remember going, you know what? I think we're done. And then it was like, no, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. People pleasers are very selfish. Martyrs are very selfish people. And these are the ones that you hear who complain about demon possession, being attacked by ghosts, being in relationships with abusive people. Now, that may have come from actual real childhood trauma. And we could get into that, but that's a whole other subject. In any case, no matter who you are, no matter where you're at with all that, the key to all of it is to first and foremost acknowledge that the universe loves you unconditionally and wants to give you absolutely everything that you want. Not just what you need, but what you want. And when you can say to yourself, in the worst circumstances, everything I need is inside of me. I don't need to try and get anything from anybody else. When you can start from that perspective and then start slowly taking the steps towards building your life back together, your life will start to change. And it may take years. It may take a lot of work. And you'll have to go through a lot of pain. You'll have to experience a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. You'll have to mourn for all the stuff that you didn't get, all the ways that people didn't love you the way that you wanted. You'll have to feel those feelings and mourn through them. So this is why demons are angry. They're stuffing all that in. They go through the same process. Maybe they're not human, but they go through the same process. And they're having a temper tantrum because they want, the light, God, the infinite power, the singularity, whatever word you want to use. They want that power of their own divine essence to fill them with bliss. And instead of being fearless about it, they've gone trying to get it through control and manipulation and predation and everything else. So they're just like humans in that way. So, see, I'm trying to demystify it. When you can see that demons are no different than human souls, then they're not as frightening. They do things that scare us. We can't see them, and they do things, and they have a power of their own. They do have a lot of power, but they can only affect you, again, if you are vibrating on that level. And again, I'll shut up and then we'll take some more questions. But in order to have a demon come into your world like that, it means that you have gone that same kind of martyr route or that anger route, and you've gone so deep into it that now you've broken through a spiritual barrier and you've opened up a door to bring them in. But the same, if you go in the opposite direction, you can close that door. And things like unconditional love will frighten the hell out of them. And they won't want anything to do with you. Just like if you're with an abusive person. When your vibration starts to rise, they're either going to want to rise with you or they're going to destroy the relationship and want to leave you. Or they'll force you to leave them. Okay? All right. So now let me see how many questions there are here. I don't know. I don't think I see any questions. You guys are just so wrapped in attention that you don't have any questions. Well, then I'm doing my job. Let's see here. No, I guess there are some questions. So again, I gotta scroll through all of the statements to get to the question. Folk of the Elder Path. Question: are demons associated with the lower self, or something totally different? Well, the lower self is how they're going to connect to you. But the point I'm trying to make here is that they're no different than other beings. So yeah, like people, there are people who are going to be associated with the lower self, but I'm not really trying to focus on that so much. So it's not that your question is wrong, it's just that's not the focus that I'm going with right now. Let's see. Sorry, again, I'm trying to find the questions here. Cosmo Joe, question. For years when I meditated, did energy work, I would see shadow figures come into my room. Years later, I have met many people with this experience. What is your perspective on shadow people? Well, again, I don't know. I need to ask you some more questions about, what is the feeling that comes from that? If you feel good around them, then maybe they're ascended masters. I don't know. But the feeling I get from this, and I think if I'm comparing it to some of your other questions, you're doing energy work because you want power. If you want power, you're coming from a place of insecurity. You're coming from an assumption that you don't have enough. And so if you have more power, you'll be okay. I think it also comes from a need to stay in your head and avoid your feelings. So yeah, if you do energy work, especially powerful energy work, this is why the Taoists are really, they only teach right-hand path, because the right-hand path, all the discipline involved in right-hand path work protects you from your own selfish agendas. Now the left-hand path gives you a straight access to it, which means that if you come from a place of insecurity or a place of need or a place of not having enough or not trusting, then you're going straight in there, and then yeah, you're going to invite negative entities. I know a guy who practices a very powerful left-hand path that other people that do it, it's very empowering to them. He became a very powerful teacher, and people who came and worked with him, and again, he's looking for victims because he wants to be worshipped as, a god in flesh. And so he finds people that he can manipulate. He teaches them this, and he's trying to use his energy to attract them to himself. And they start talking about being demon possessed and all that. So again, it's not the energy work that does it. It's the motivation of the person who's doing it. So based on what little information I have, I would say that your need for power is attracting negative entities they're sniffing around. They're just sniffing around to see how much of a victim you are. How much, So again, it's the stuff that I teach, like the Hool breath and some of the other things that I teach, I'm not going to teach you the kind of stuff that gives you that kind of power. So hopefully when somebody trains with me, this is also important when you're working with a teacher, why it's important to have a teacher that you trust and to work with a teacher, because this guy that I just mentioned, he's the head of his lineage. And so when people come to work with him, they're going to be influenced by his power signature. If he's got entities running around doing things with him, then so are they. So ideally, you want to have a teacher you can trust, because when you work with a teacher and you do their tradition and you do their exercises, then you're protected. So things like the Hool breath, that's why I use the Hool breath as initiation into my path, because when you do the Hool breath, you will be connected to my personal experience with Mother Hola, and she is very healing and very protective. So even though you don't have to be perfect, you can still have all these emotional failings, but at least you have this protection, this umbrella protection. And if people are really focused on being just like the woman I talked to, who hung up on me because I didn't tell her what she wanted to hear, and so people are not going to be attracted to work with me if they're coming from that place. Eventually, if that's the case, they're going to want to stop working with me. Which is why at some point, if you work with me and I counsel with you, at some point you are going to have to make a decision. And some people walk away from me. They think that I'm doing something to them, or that I am too harsh on them, or I don't understand them, or whatever it is. I go through it with my teacher all the time. That unconscious resistance, they act on it and they leave. And that tells me that they've gotten to a point where they were about to let go of some of this victim mentality. They're about to let go of some of this limited thinking, and they don't want to. It's too frightening. And so their unconscious mind tells them all this nonsense about, I'm whatever it is that they see me as that I'm doing wrong. One person accused me of being a misogynist, of all things. So it's the kind of craziness that your mind will come up with to justify walking away from it. But that means I'm doing my job. And somebody who really is able to work with me is able to get to that point. They get past their narcissistic projection of me. They're either in love with me or whatever it is. They want to be my best friend or whatever they think I am, and then they find out I'm a human being. And then they have their negative projections, their transference of their parents or whoever onto me. And, if they can get past that, then I can teach them. Then I can really teach them. Okay? I don't know if I answered your question or not, but let's see if there are any more questions. Redamax, question. Why do I always feel like I'm bleeding out? I have no idea. How am I supposed to know? What does that mean? What does it symbolize? I don't know. I always feel drained. I keep having the vision of my blood flowing out of my forearms. I don't know. The feeling of feeling drained, I can tell you, generally speaking, maybe this doesn't apply to you, but generally speaking, it means that you have major unresolved emotional issues. You may be pushing a lot of feelings down, and all of the energy that goes into keeping those feelings pushed down is draining you. That's why you're feeling drained. And then we project that onto others. People ask too much of me, and maybe they do, but then again, you're allowing that to happen so that you can be diverted from what's really going on. So again, that's just a general thing. I would have to talk to you more to know more, but without more information, that's what I think. Okay, looking for the question. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Sean 303 question. How is it that one may be afraid of their own innate divinity? Assuming that everything is of the one source divinity. Very good question. Let me answer that for you. Infinity is similar to, in the Norse tradition, what we call Gununga gap. Think of it as a black hole. Think of it as the center of the sun. The way the center of the sun works is that the light and the heat and the radiation that comes out of the sun that reaches us as rays, it starts off as intense gravity in the center of the sun. This intense gravity crushes the hydrogen atoms and causes nuclear fusion. So that's a form of emptiness. That emptiness where the atoms get crushed, and they lose their cohesion, that's the essence of pure infinity. In order to experience that, you have to die to the limitation of who you are. Just like that hydrogen atom has to lose, its cohesion. It has to die to itself in order to get the nuclear energy that comes through the nuclear fusion. That is what evolution is. This is why there's the myth of Ragnarok, where the gods and the giants fight against each other and creates this mutual annihilation, and then from that comes the new universe. That's what the myth of the Christian myth of the apocalypse is. The destruction where the heavenly forces and the devil come together and boom, it destroys the universe, and then a new universe is created. This is where your soul is going. That's what you're afraid of. Now, we experience that in little tiny increments. I am experiencing that. My income has shot up recently, and I'm in a whole different, I'm living in a whole different scenario than I was, just a year ago, 6 months ago. I just had an experience the past week, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but I could have another monumental jump. I'm not saying it will or it won't happen, but at the very least, I am being challenged to change the limitations about what my life could be. And it's scary as hell. It's really scary. When people think about being super rich, like people who want to win the lottery, what happens to the majority of people who win the lottery? People who live in a trailer and then they win, $18 million or $40 million. A lot of them end up being broke 5 years later. They spend it all, they destroy it, they can't handle it. They sabotage it. So I'm having to face my own limitations and the fear that I have, and I have to actually let go if I continue thinking about some of these potential prospects that are coming my way. I have to destroy the limitations that I'm comfortable with. And that's scary, really scary. So that's just a tiny level. Imagine on the spiritual level. When you evolve spiritually, you start to tap into this infinite power, which is not infinite power like I feel good, but infinite power of being crushed to death, and your ego gets completely destroyed, and then you become infinite. That's what people are afraid of, and thank you for asking that question, that is what demon possession represents. It's symbolic. The demon that is controlling and oppressing and manipulating and making people's faces turn all weird and making them throw up and blah, blah, that represents unconscious resistance. So a demon is nothing more than the extreme example of unconscious resistance to spiritual growth. And when we see that and we get frightened by demons, what frightens us is that we see ourselves in that. Because that is how we feel when we are presented with true spiritual growth. But we need that extreme example to experience it. That's why people like to go to horror movies. But horror movies aren't designed to give you spiritual liberation. Horror movies are designed to keep you trapped in that, and that's why people enjoy it. Even though they wouldn't want to have Freddy Krueger, show up to their house, or, whatever the guy is, the hockey mask guy, whatever. They wouldn't want that guy in real life, but fantasy life, they want to be around it because that fear keeps them titillated, but what's really happening is they're empowering their own limitation because they don't want to go past it. That's why Christians love talking about Satan, and they love talking about, God and the devil. And even though God is omnipotent, Jehovah is omnipotent, they speak as though Satan is almost equal to him. And that if you're not careful, Satan will deceive you and drag you into hell. I mean, if you've got this omnipotent God, how is this devil able to do that? And they're so afraid of the devil. Our ancestors weren't afraid. There wasn't any devil that they were afraid of. There were thyrses, there were negative entities, but there was never this this dualism between the light and the dark is almost or as powerful as the light. You never see that in the ancient traditions. Okay? Don't know if I answered your question or not. Let's see here. Looking for the questions again. Daniel Borgerson Engerud. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right or not. Question. Boy, that's a long question. Let's see if there's a question or if it's just a bunch of statements that you're throwing out. How is it possible to go into any relationship without an agenda? Good question. I didn't say that you should go into a relationship without an agenda. If I did, then I misspoke. You need to know what your agenda is, first off, and you need to own it. So to give you the example of the martyr says, I'm just unconditionally loving you, and I just give and I give and I give unconditionally, and you never give back to me. And well, they're full of shit. They obviously they have a desperate need to be loved. So again, they are finding victims. You know, how many times have you heard about, I can change him, I can fix him, yeah, I just need somebody to fix. He's so messed up, I'll take him in. And then the agenda is, if they fix him, then he'll love me, right? I did this. I was married, I don't know how long ago was I married? It was a while ago. My ex-wife. When deep into the marriage, it became apparent that she had some trauma surrounding, I won't get into it, but she had some trauma. And so as her husband, I had an opportunity to help her through that, to love her unconditionally through that. I had an agenda. My agenda was that, oh, once I get her fixed, then she'll never leave me. And the opposite happened. Once I helped her through it, then the relationship fell apart. I had an agenda. So I wasn't aware of my agenda. I wasn't conscious of it. I wasn't helping her unconditionally. I had a condition. So you're right. It's impossible to have a relationship without an agenda. But it is possible to be aware of what your agendas are. And see, this is something I've done with women all the time. You know, women, especially in my experience, again, forgive me if I'm being sexist here, I don't mean to be, but women especially will have the attitude of, you know, if I have to tell him, then, you know, he doesn't deserve whatever. Like, you're just supposed to know what they want. And I hate that. If you want something from me, you have to ask me. And then if you ask me, I have to have the right to say no. Because and that's what people do. They don't ask, they assume, and then they give with the feeling of, if I give this to him, then he's going to owe me or she's going to owe me. And then when they don't respond the way that you want, then you get furious. And how can you be so selfish? I did this and this and this for you. Instead, you know, I need to know what it is that you want from me. If you want me to be a certain way or act a certain way, tell me. If I can do it, I will. But I want to have the right to say no. That, no, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. And if you don't want to do that, then we can choose not to partner together. But that can't happen if the person, you know, isn't owning their agenda. So hopefully I cleared that up. But you're right, it's impossible not to have an agenda, but it is possible to be conscious of what your agendas are, and then you can act appropriately. When people are not conscious of their agendas, or they're not willing to own their agendas, that's when they get into unconscious, all that crap that goes on. All right. And there's nothing wrong with agendas, especially if they're mutually beneficial. You know, my fiance and I had a really wonderful scenario set up. She had never been with a guy who allowed her to be really affectionate. I don't understand that. I can't understand that for the life of me. But she'd never had that. And she used to say things like, I just want you to lie there and then I just want to do whatever I want, which meant that she wanted to just touch my body. Like, hell yeah, I'll lie there for an hour while you massage and touch my body. It's something she needed to do. She said it was something in her hands. So it was totally mutually beneficial. I'm a total attention Or I'm the one that when it comes to the massage, I want the massage. I can give a massage, I enjoy doing it, but I'd much rather be the one getting the massage. So here we've got perfect lining up of agendas. And she would thank me afterwards. She'd say, thank you so much for letting me do that. No guy has ever let me do that before. So yeah, we both had mutual agendas and it went great. So that can happen, absolutely. All right. Johnny Delgadillo question, can a past life be the seeker of power unconsciously in my presence? I don't understand your question. I did not like a video practice because the word my mind said was power and I truly wanted release of power. So it's hard for me to answer your question. It's not clear to me what you're asking. I'd have to talk to you, so sorry about that. Ascended Pepe. Ascended Pepe? How the hell did you find my channel? It makes me want to ask you all kinds of questions, which I'm sure I won't like the answer to. But question, what's your opinion on Archangel Michael? I don't have an opinion on him. I'm not a Christian. I like the idea of him, but I personally don't believe in Archangel Michael because I don't believe in the Abrahamic tradition. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just that's not something I choose to believe in. I've had many people in my life tell me they can see my aura and I'm indigo and to contact Michael, and I did. Afterwards, the spiritual ascension came. Well, I don't know if the spiritual ascension came, especially if you're calling yourself Pepe. And you give me a lot of doubts. I also have doubts with people who are self-diagnosed as I've been enlightened, I've been awakened, I have ascended. Most people who say that usually aren't. They're usually deluded in some fashion. You never hear me say that about myself. So, but I don't have any problem with the idea of the Archangel Michael, and if it works for you, go for it. So I can't say if it's right or wrong or good or bad. If it works for you, do it. I mean, my path ultimately, if it works, do it. I believe in practical functioning. If it practically works, you should do it. So if it works for you, do it. All right. Falcon Showcase question. I made a baby with my ex-wife and then she went nuts, so we split up. I don't know how true that is. You say she went nuts. If I talk to her, is she going to tell me that you went nuts? I don't know that. So we split up. Then I made a baby with someone else and the same thing happened. Why did my daughter turn out okay? Will the next one? Dude, what the hell are you doing making all these babies? Seriously, man, what the hell? I think maybe you're nuts because you're running around making all these babies. Can you afford them? Are you supporting them? Dude, what is with all the babies? You're still asking about the next one. You're going to make another one? I could be wrong. Maybe you have the greatest relationship now and you guys are... Holy crap, man, hold off on the baby making for a while. That's my suggestion. Let's see here. All right, again, looking for the questions. I don't see the Millen Mason question. Why are my guides upset with me? I don't know. I'd have to ask you more questions to know that. Okay, so let's take a break and then I'll come back with some more stuff and we'll see where we go from there. Where am I going? Here I am. Okay, so let's take a look. So I'm seeing here, probably because of the title of the video, there seems to be a lot of new people to the channel. So first, before I answer your questions, 99.9% of your questions will all be answered in my videos. One of the things you can do if what you really want is to be not only successful in life, but have success in the spiritual path, especially mine, you have to learn how to be disciplined and work hard. One of the things that you can do is actually go onto my channel and put the time and effort into searching all of my videos and binge watching the playlists and all of that. All of your questions, many of them are already going to be answered there. So I'm already answering really basic questions. Having said that, welcome to the channel, and I'm happy that you're here. And if your question is something that will stimulate me into something good, I'm happy to answer that. So let me see. Falcon Showcase says something nice to me, question, and then he says something nice, thank you. Or she, I don't know who it is. Swift Data, you're obviously new. Question, is there such a thing as fake guides? Yes and no. Yes, you can have the experience that there are guides that are giving you false information, but you created them. Are there archons? Are there beings of light who keep you trapped in the matrix? Yes, potentially, but you created them because you are afraid of real responsibility for your soul. You are afraid of having real enlightenment, which is completely up to you. It's not up to anything or anybody else. It's completely up to you. Listen, I used to believe that if I became a master of spirit fighting and left my body and did all kinds of stuff, that I would become, a perfected immortal, which is the Taoist equivalent of enlightenment. Until I actually experienced some of that, and holy crap, did I get some serious, major energy. And, I don't practice it like I did, so I don't have that kind of energy at the moment. But it did not make me enlightened. That's like saying if I go to the gym and take steroids and lift weights and get as big as, whoever you want to be as big as, that then I will be strong and healthy. And you're not. People end up dying from enlarged heart and liver and all kinds of other things because they screwed their body up. So there's nothing outside of you that's going to give you what you want. So if you're asking me the question about are there fake guides, that tells me that you're not connected to yourself, because if you're connected to yourself, you're not going to care if there are fake guides out there or not. So what if there are? I don't believe that I can be swindled by them, because I don't operate from an assumption that the universe is limited. I don't operate from any negative belief systems. I assume that everything is my responsibility and it's up to me to make myself happy, and I believe that the universe wants nothing more but to make me happy. So when somebody comes along with something that doesn't jive with that, all kinds of red flags are going to go off, and I'm going to go, that doesn't sound right to me. But if you're operating from weakness, if you're operating from insecurity, if you're operating from fear, then somebody will come along and say, hey man, I've got this thing. If you give me $1,000, I can make you 10,000 in a week. That's what fake guides are. If you have an experience of a fake guide, it's coming from your own insecurity, your own limitation. So if you work on being happy and comfortable with yourself right here and right now, then you're bulletproof. Okay? All right. Can demons influence you without possessing you? Yes, but the same thing. If they are, it's only because you have asked them to. And that will only come from your limitations. Your selfish is the wrong word, come from your fear-based limitation, and your lower self, your unconscious mind, will create them. That's again why I don't recommend that people do drugs of any kind. Don't smoke weed, don't drop acid, don't do ayahuasca, because you won't know if the spirit that comes to you is your own narcissistic lower self justifying your whatever your craziness is, or if it's an actual being. So, in fact, those things tend to keep you trapped in your lower self, keep you trapped in your own illusions. Rita Max, you didn't say question, but I can see it's a question. If I'm Eastern European, is it all right to worship the Norse gods? It's okay with me. You can worship whoever the heck you want. I've worshipped Taoist gods, I've worshipped African gods, I've worshipped Celtic gods, I've worshipped East Indian gods, I've worshipped a lot of different gods, and they all are happy to work with me. There's no racism in the spiritual realm. That doesn't mean that there isn't a strong argument for working with entities of your own ethnic tradition. There's a lot to be gained from it, but it's not required by any stretch of the imagination. And I can list off a lot of people I know and don't know who have had direct connections with Odin. I can promise you, any racists out there, Odin could care less about somebody's ethnic background. And in fact, there was a recent article that came up about, I don't know how true it is, but I'm open to believing it. A 10,000-year-old skeleton, when they looked at the DNA in Britain, came to the conclusion that the individual had dark to black skin and blue eyes. Maybe those were the first Britons, for all we know. I don't know. I honestly don't care. Doesn't matter to me one way or another. Question, how can a person overcome critical self-talk and hate? By watching my channel, by binge watching my channel, and working with me. And there are probably other ways too, but that's the best way I know. That's why I'm here. Okay, Carol McKenzie question, are there different levels of demons? I'm sure there are, just like there are different levels of assholes in the world. Who cares? David Lordy, have you ever thought about taking someone under your wing to pass on your knowledge? Yes, I do it all the time. Go to thunderwizard.com. That's where you can become an apprentice. Rita Max. So again, if you put the question in front, I know it's a question. So do we worship the Norse gods or imitate them? That's what worship is. You guys are asking me a lot of questions that I answer in a lot of my videos. So ultimately, you're thinking about it too hard. You can talk to them and they'll tell you how they want to interact with you. It's a relationship. Is asking an external source of power for help making us weak? No, not under the ways that I teach you. Get a Vedic reading from me, astrology.thunderwizard.com. I'll teach you how to worship the deity and the planetary deity that wants to work with you. I'll tell you exactly how you need to work and worship what will best help you. Daniel Borgensen Engerd question on topic. I gave my demon a hug through lucid dreaming and forgave him. He doesn't bother me. I realized it was a manifestation of my own negativity, so embrace your demons. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about might be a little bit different than somebody who's actually being levitated and thrown across the room. I've seen that kind of shit happen. That kind of scenario, I wouldn't recommend hugging that one, but who am I to say? Maybe it'll work. But yeah, you're right. There's also the demons that are our own self-created demons within ourselves that are really just our own negative feelings we have towards ourselves. And I think that is an excellent way to work with it. Okay. Looking for the question here. Jedi Black Knight, you need to put question in the front. Jedi Black Knight, I think I've seen you before. You need to spend more time on my channel. I think you're a YouTube hopper. You hop from one thing to another and you ask these kinds of questions. Have I seen orbs? What difference does it make if I have or I haven't? Are they beings from other dimensions or parallel realities? What difference does it make? This is why I'm saying that. People get mad at me when I keep asking, who cares? Because here's your real question. Is there a way we can summon, you want to summon an entity from another dimension? Why do you need to do that? Nothing outside of you is going to fix you. So your need to do that tells me that you aren't comfortable and happy where you are, which means it doesn't matter. Yes, it can happen, but if you don't know what you're doing and you're doing it for those kinds of reasons, you're not going to get what you want. Falcon Showcase question. When I tap into memories embedded in the crystalline grid, are there memories of me doing it? I have no idea. I don't even know what your question is. I don't know that you're tapping into the crystalline grid. I don't know that. You say you are, but how do I know that? I don't know your question. I don't know what matters. I don't want my ex to know where I've been. Dude, who cares? Forget about your ex. What does it matter where she knows where you've been or not? Come on, man. Who cares? Really, just enjoy being with who you're with and let your ex do whatever the hell she's doing. It's not your problem. It's none of your business what she knows and doesn't know. So just let go. Athena's son question, do you think Odin is a counterpart of Jupiter? No. Odin is connected to Mercury, and if Odin is a counterpart of anything, he's the counterpart of Loki. And Rahu would be the planet connected to Loki, and when you want to see Rahu, when Rahu is most empowered is when he is in Gemini, which is a Mercury sign. So Odin is, if I had to pick a planet, it would be Mercury. Every time I say that, I can hear Odin say, you can't trap me into one planet. But that's the closest I can say about that. All right. Millen Mason question, I was told that my eyes look possessed and at times my eyes do the reptilian thing. No, they don't. Your eyes do not do the reptilian thing. You're smoking a lot of weed or you're wrapped up in some delusion. You're not a reptilian. My friend told me that she thought I could possibly harm sometime later on. Is this a demon? No. Nope. You're having a lot of fun with yourself, but I don't think that's really happening. It's coming from a guy who has looked demons in the face. I don't think that's what's happening with you. Sounds like fun, though. My eyes do the snake-like thing all the time. They change colors. I do something as sharing my vessel that may not be good. I bet you if I talk to you for a half an hour, we can find out what your real problem is. I don't think that's what it is. You're escaping something within you. You've got some unresolved things and you're escaping it through that. I don't believe you. I even go so far to say you smoke a lot of weed, maybe? Yeah? Yeah? Maybe? I could be wrong. David Lordy, what is the name of the Most High God? We don't have one. We don't do that here. Go talk to a Christian. They've got an answer for you. Falcon Showcase, the crystalline grid is the web of energy that connects the collective conscious of our planet. It contains records of the Akash. In your opinion. I don't know that to be true. See, assumptions are everything. You have made an assumption, and you assume that I agree with your assumption. That is a name somebody has given to something, and you have made the assumption that it's true. I don't know that. In your opinion. Question, so Norse mythology and Vedic mythology both real? Absolutely. Norse mythology and Vedic mythology are two expressions of the same root. At least 50,000 years ago, perhaps even older than that, there was a group of people, or perhaps multiple groups of people, who we would look at as Proto-Indo-European. And they came up from East Africa, came up through what is now Egypt, and because there was a break in the ice ages, they were able to make their way through the Sahara Desert, and at that time it was grassland, and they made their way up into the northern hemisphere, and they went all over, Europe and parts of the Middle East. and they spoke a language we would call Indo-European, and they worshipped a religion that we would call Indo-European. And when you look at the Vedic mythology, I do this all the time, I've written books about it, go read my books. When you read Vedic mythology and you study the language and you study the language of the gods of Norse mythology, you find out they are the same gods. Let me give you an example. Indra. Indra is made up of 3 words. In, thu, ra. In means full or bright. Thu means the drop of ambrosial nectar or the moon. And Ra means king, just like in Egypt. Ra. Inthura is the king of the full moon. And I could get into why he's named that. You know of him in Norse mythology as Thor. Now, Inthura and Thor are the same word with different pronunciations. Thor comes from the original Germanic, which is Thunar, which means first cause, nar, or lord of Thu. So that same thing is there. I can do that with almost all of the Norse gods. And if I haven't yet, I probably will. It's the same religion. It goes back very deep. So when people come to me and they say, I follow the Norse path, and they do that whole, racist nonsense, they have no idea what they're saying is that they worship the gods of the Africans that came out of East Africa 50,000 years ago and spread all over into Europe. They have no idea that what they're saying is that their original ancestors had dark skin. No clue. In fact, let me tell you again, I've said this before, it's the funniest thing. A geneticist wanted to find out, the oldest known skeleton in Europe that you can get viable DNA from, he wanted to find out which group in Europe was most connected to this. Now bear in mind, this 30,000-year-old, this would have been one of the first modern humans who had made it into the Northern Hemisphere. So I can't prove it, but logic would dictate he was probably still of dark skin because he hadn't been in Ice Age conditions long enough to lose his pigment. It's the only reason that I have this light skin. I was watching about some guy who had vitiligo. He was an African-American guy. But when you looked at the parts of his hand and his face that had lost all the pigment, he looked exactly like me. He didn't look any different than I do. It's just the pigment on his skin. We react to such minor stuff. Anyway, this DNA from this 30,000-year-old skeleton, which is the oldest skeleton, which represents the original, people that were there in Europe 30,000 years ago, you know who they represent the most? The Norse people. What does that tell you? That tells you that the Norse people, the people that still live in Scandinavia who have blonde hair and blue eyes, those people are more genetically connected to the first Africans that ever came into Europe. The fact that they have blue eyes and blonde hair is simply because they were living in Ice Age conditions for 50,000 years. So, the point is, if you really want to tap into the ancestors, you got to be willing to go all the way back. I could go on and on about when I worked with the Yoruba people and I learned from them and the language and words in their tradition that, I'll give you one. The word for ancestor in Yoruba is awo. Awo means mystery. It means ancestor. It also means grandparent. In the Proto-Germanic, the word for grandparent is Aiwa Haimaj. You have that saying, it means my ancestor. Aiwa, Awo. If you look in Latin, the word for ancestor in Latin is Awo. How is it that the Yoruba people who are all the way in West Africa, who say they came from East Africa, they say they came up through Egypt and then went to West Africa. How is it that in their language the word for ancestor is exactly the same as it is for the people in Northern Europe? Eventually, at some point, you're going to go far enough back, you're going to see they're the same people. So, and it's going to make the racists upset, but you know, there's racists on my channel that because I've got bald head and I talk about Odin and all that, and they hear me do this and they still keep coming back. And I want to say to you guys, if after all this time of hearing me talk about how we're all one race, if after all this time you're still coming back onto my channel, there's obviously something I'm saying that you want. So why don't you drop the whole racist thing? Why don't you just drop it? Because, you know, the guys that don't like what I have to say, they leave my channel. So why are you still here? And you know, there's a few. You know exactly who you are. Okay. So enough of that. Okay, so yeah, so some of you guys are new to my channel. I think some of you guys you're bored, you're young, you're smoking weed, you got nothing better to do. So I'm gonna pass by some of these questions because you know, again, you got to watch my videos. It'll answer a lot of them. Is marijuana that bad? Yep. Marijuana, unless you've got some medical need for it, it's only going to cause you problems. And I've talked about it before. It doesn't help you. It keeps you stuck in your intellect. You think you're having a spiritual experience, but you're not. It's draining you of your energy. Bottom line is, get all, you know, don't judge people for it. Do whatever the hell you want. If it's fun, go for it. But it will drain you of your energy, and it will keep you stuck in your intellect. Yeah, a lot of questions I'm not going to answer because they're really, you guys are brand new to my channel, so you got to spend more time. And I'm starting to get tired, so maybe it's time for me to end things here. Okay, so there we go. All right, so I am going to take a short break, and I will come back, see if I have anything to say. But until then, let's continue to watch, and you know, take note of the links there. If you need my help or my services, this is where most of them are. So I'll be right back. Okay, look for any last minute questions. Okay, so very good. Johnny Delgadillo, congratulations. You haven't smoked weed in a week. It's going to take you a little longer than that if you do it a lot to get it out of your system. So keep going, my friend. Congratulations. Okay, so what is it that I want to say here before I end? I think I kind of got through all of it. Let me just go through some business real quick. For those of you who want to study Vedic astrology with me, you can go to astrologycertification.thunderwizard.com, and you'll see there that level 1 and level 2, if you get the package, you know, you save a lot of money. That's going to end soon. When I'm done with the level 2, then I'm going to separate it, and level 2 will be, you know, you won't be able to get a package anymore. So my suggestion is, if you want to learn it and potentially make money doing it, then I would get it now. What I am planning on doing, and we'll see what happens, I can't make any guarantees, but my hope is that not only will I be able to take my excess and give it to people, but it's really more designed for you to be able to, you know, I'm going to continue to advertise the astrology services, and when people go to my site, they can either choose to buy from me, which I will charge a lot of money because I want my free time, or they can buy from you at the price I used to charge. And so basically, you know, I'll do all the advertising for you on this, but then you can just send people to your own site on my site. That's what people get when they pass the certification. And you know, you have to be able to pass a test that you can do astrology readings for me. So that's there. I do plan on doing some certifications for rune readings and for, we'll see, other things, perhaps career counseling, because they all kind of go together. If you need counseling of any kind, whether it be spiritual or whether it be whatever, you can go to career.thunderwizard.com and get a session with me. A lot of you asking me these questions, I can't answer them unless I talk with you. If you're really serious, you know, you need to put some effort into it. If you're just wasting time and throwing questions off the top of your head because you're bored, then by all means, this isn't for you. If you want to learn shamanism, the kind of shamanism I teach, which is, I'm a syncretist. I've learned from Taoists, I've learned from Vedics, I've learned from Africans, East Indians, and now with all of that and my understanding of language and history, I've been able to uncover the practices of my ethnic ancestors in Europe, and I've been able to bring it all together in a way that I think empowers all of them. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole. I think that what I'm moving towards is the next level of shamanism for the whole world. I'm not saying that I have to be the only one doing that, but I think I'm definitely one that is doing that. If you want to learn that, if you want to learn the power to be able to do the kinds of rituals that will open up into the wormholes into the universe, open up into the 9 worlds. A lot of you are asking, can I work with other entities and all that? I can teach you how to do that in a way which will empower you. Because the bottom line of shamanism, and I use the word shamanism loosely, the bottom line of ritual, of ancient ritualistic magic, of the practices of all of our ancestors, is to be able to hack our unconscious mind so that we can intend our reality. So if you want to learn how to do that, go to thunderwizard.com, sign up at the $25 level, and then scroll down to the bottom and start from the first video. In fact, I got to put a video on today. I'm going to show people how they can use the North Star astrology to be able to find out where they are in the 9-year cycle of the North Star and see what's going to happen in their life this year. So those are the kinds of things you get from that. So anyway, that's it for all of the questions. I don't see any more questions here. Yeah, I don't see any more questions. So I'm running out of steam. It's been over 2 hours. This has been great. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here. You know where to reach me if you have any questions. And that's it. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks.